Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take complex topics, sift through the information, and try to give you the insights you need, nice and clear.
And today we're tackling something pretty specific, actually. It pops up in gardening forums, neighborhood chats, this whole cardboard dilemma.
Exactly. It starts with this really relatable scenario. Picture it. Spring's almost here. You're dreaming of fresh veggies from your own garden.
The good life.
Right. And our two students, Kesser and Steen, they're smart. They want to help their Aunt Grøn start a new garden patch. But, digging up lawn, it's tough work.
Oh, it's brutal, back-breaking stuff.
So they come up with this clever, low-effort plan. Cover the grass with cardboard over winter. Let the weeds just wither underneath. Seems great, right? Eco-friendly, saves effort.
Makes perfect sense on the surface.
Well, Tante Grøn apparently didn't think so. She had, let's just say, a strong reaction. Absolutely not. You can't use cardboard. It's full of PFAS.
Yeah.
Terrible stuff.
Whoa. Okay. So that's quite the reaction. And, the concern about PFAS isn't unfounded, generally speaking. People hear about it.
For sure. And that's what we're digging into today. Tante Grøn's worry, is it the whole story when it comes to plain old cardboard in the garden? Is it really a major PFAS risk there?
Yeah, our mission is to unpack that. We want to separate, the general anxiety from the specific facts about this use case.
We'll look at the nuances, give you a clearer picture, and honestly, it takes us on a bit of a journey. From the garden soil right to, surprisingly, your dinner plate.
It really does. And it's fascinating how, like you said, all paper and cardboard often get mushed together in these discussions about safety.
Yeah, like it's all the same thing.
Exactly. But it's really not. Now, most people, probably like Kesser and Steen, and maybe you listening, you've heard of PFAS, right? Per and polyfluoroalkyl substances.
The forever chemicals.
Those are the ones famous for repelling grease and water. Super useful in nonstick pans, waterproof jackets, even some food packaging. But we also know the downsides, they don't break down easily. They can build up.
Okay, so that's the baseline fear Tante Grøn is tapping into. But how does that apply specifically to the cardboard Kesser and Steen wanted to use?
Right. Here's the key thing. It's all about why PFAS might be there. There's the cardboard, where PFAS is deliberately added. Think about things that need to resist grease or moisture.
Like pizza boxes, burger wrappers.
Exactly. Baking paper, microwave popcorn bags, those little paper molds for muffins sometimes. That stuff is often treated with PFAS to do its job.
And that kind of cardboard, if you used a ton of it in your garden, could potentially leach PFAS into the soil.
Theoretically, yes. That's where Tante Grøn's concern is valid, for that specific type of material. But that's not usually what people mean when they talk about using cardboard for mulching.
Right, they usually mean.
They usually mean the good cardboard, your standard brown corrugated boxes, like shipping boxes, moving boxes, maybe uncoated egg cartons. These generally don't have PFAS added. It's not part of how they're made.
So for that kind of cardboard, the risk is much lower.
Much, much lower. We're talking minimal risk,
Yeah.
especially compared to other ways we get exposed to PFAS, like, dust in our homes or sometimes even drinking water, depending on where you live. That distinction gets lost a lot.
Okay, this is super helpful. And you mentioned something earlier about a way to tell the difference, like a home test.
Yeah, it's a neat little trick. Not foolproof science, but gives you a good clue. Take a bit of oil or something greasy. If it soaks right in and leaves a stain, probably untreated cardboard, no added PFAS.
Okay.
But if that grease beads up, sits on the surface, tries to roll off, that suggests it's been surface treated. Could be PFAS, could be wax, but it's treated for resistance.
Huh. That's actually really practical. Something you could check right there in your kitchen before you take a box out to the garden. Empowers you a bit.
Exactly. It gives you a quick visual check. But, to really get why that difference exists, it helps to understand just briefly how cardboard is actually made.
Okay, walk us through it. What's in a typical box?
Well, at its heart, it's mostly wood pulp. Cellulose fibers from trees, sometimes other fibers like straw, but usually wood for standard boxes. They break down the wood, wash it, maybe bleach it.
And then they add stuff.
Right. They add things for strength, maybe smoothness, durability, sometimes dyes for color. And this is the stage where if it's destined for food packaging or needs water resistance, they might add PFAS or similar chemicals as a coating.
So a specific step for a specific purpose. It's not just automatically in all cardboard.
Precisely. It's an intentional addition for performance. Your average brown shipping box, it's mostly just those cellulose fibers, some natural glues holding the layers together, maybe some basic printing ink on the outside.
And what about those glues and inks? Anything to worry about there for the garden?
Generally, not much these days. Many glues are starch-based or otherwise non-toxic. Inks used to be a bigger concern with heavy metals, especially decades ago, but regulations are much tighter now, particularly for packaging. For plain brown boxes, the risk from those components is usually considered pretty low for soil use.
So choosing plain, unbleached, uncoated boxes seems like the safest bet if you're going the cardboard route. It minimizes introducing anything unwanted.
Absolutely. Keep it simple, keep it brown, basically.
Okay, that clarifies the cardboard situation a lot. But Kesser and Steen, they were probably thinking about other options too, right? Like, what else do people use to kill off grass or weeds for a new bed?
Sure. A common one is plastic sheeting or tarpaulins. Just lay it over the area.
Right. But plastic comes with its own set of chemical questions, doesn't it? Like plasticizers.
Exactly. Plastic tarps often contain plasticizers, like phthalates, to make them flexible. And some phthalates are known endocrine disruptors, which means they can mess with hormone systems.
Can those leak into the soil?
Yeah, small amounts can migrate out, especially when the plastic gets warm and wet, like under garden conditions. Now, plants don't usually take up large amounts of most phthalates, but the chemicals themselves can hang around in the soil for quite a while, months or even years sometimes. So it's a different kind of chemical input compared to, say, clean cardboard.
Okay. What about more traditional natural methods? Did Kesser and Steen look into those?
Well, one classic alternative, especially in coastal areas, is using seaweed or eelgrass. People have done that for ages.
As mulch.
Yeah, as mulch and soil amendment. It's rich in nutrients. Now, when you look at potential contaminants there, the conversation usually revolves more around things like heavy metals or maybe salt content, which you might need to manage.
But what about PFAS in seaweed?
It can contain very small amounts because, well, PFAS is unfortunately widespread in the environment, including the oceans, but the levels typically found in seaweed used for gardening are considered very low. You'd lay down maybe a 5–10 centimeter layer over the grass, maybe with clean cardboard underneath first. It works well.
So the PFAS risk from using seaweed like that is probably minimal compared to other sources.
Very minimal, especially when you start comparing it to how we get exposed through our diet, which brings us to the bigger picture.
Right. So if we're trying to be mindful of PFAS, where should we really be focusing our attention? Is the garden, whether it's cardboard or seaweed, the main battleground?
Probably not for most people.
Okay.
When you look at the major sources of PFAS exposure, it's often things like contaminated drinking water in certain areas, unfortunately, or exposure from firefighting foam, especially near training sites or airports.
What about in the home?
Inside the home, it can be stain-resistant carpets and upholstery, waterproof sprays you use on shoes or jackets, maybe older or scratched nonstick pans, and significantly, our diet.
Okay. So food becomes a key pathway.
A very key pathway. PFAS can get into the food chain and accumulate. So that means things like drinking water, as I mentioned, but also potentially eggs, dairy, meat from animals that have been exposed. And this leads us to a really important point,
Which is?
which is the connection to seafood, particularly certain types of seafood.
Okay, tell me more. Why seafood specifically?
Well, PFAS tends to accumulate in organisms moving up the food chain. And what's really striking is how much it can build up in fatty seafood. Think about mussels, oysters, certain types of fish, especially those harvested from coastal areas or fjords that might have historical pollution sources nearby.
Why those creatures?
Because many of them are filter feeders, constantly processing large volumes of water, or they're bottom dwellers, living in sediment where contaminants can settle. They become really efficient accumulators, not just of PFAS, but also heavy metals and other pollutants.
Wow. So the amount of PFAS you might get from eating certain seafood could be way higher than anything leaching from a piece of cardboard in the garden.
That's the critical takeaway. The potential PFAS risk from using clean cardboard or even seaweed as mulch in your garden is likely marginal compared to the exposure you could get from regularly eating contaminated seafood.
That really puts things in perspective.
It does. It suggests that if you're genuinely concerned about minimizing your PFAS exposure, or even heavy metals for that matter,
Your focus should maybe shift.
your focus might be more effectively directed towards understanding where your seafood comes from and what types you're eating, rather than putting all your worry into that brown box breaking down over your future veggie patch.
So it's about identifying the bigger levers you can actually pull.
Precisely. Be aware of food advisories, choose sources carefully. That's likely to have a much bigger impact on your overall exposure.
Okay, let's bring this all together then. Going back to Kesser, Steen, and Tante Grøn.
Right. Tante Grøn's fear wasn't totally out of nowhere. PFAS is used in some paper products.
But the key nuance she missed was the type of cardboard. Her concern was valid for, say, greasy food packaging, but not really for the plain, uncoated transport boxes Kesser and Steen likely had in mind.
Exactly. For that purpose, mulching weeds clean, uncoated cardboard is actually a pretty low-risk, practical, and effective solution. It biodegrades, suppresses weeds, adds some organic matter.
So hopefully you listening now feel a bit more equipped. You know how to spot potentially treated cardboard using that little grease test.
Yeah.
You understand why plain boxes are generally safer.
And you can make an informed choice for your garden. Whether it's clean cardboard, seaweed, or another method, feeling more confident about the materials you're using.
And maybe even more importantly, stepping back, you see that the really significant PFAS exposures often lie elsewhere, particularly in our diet, with things like certain seafood being a potential hotspot.
That knowledge is power, right? It helps you prioritize. Where can you make the biggest difference in reducing your exposure if that's your goal? It might be more about your dinner plate than your garden plot.
It definitely shifts the focus, so it leaves us with a thought, really. We live in a world full of complex chemistry, trying to balance convenience with health, with protecting the environment.
It's a constant negotiation.
It is. So thinking about everything we've discussed today, from Kesser and Steen's garden patch to the wider environment, what's one small, informed choice you could make, maybe even today, that goes beyond just the garden and makes a positive difference for your well-being or for the planet?
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.